This Final Cut Pro 10 Tour presentation is brought to you by the LumaForge Share Station, the world's best storage for Final Cut 10. For more information on how the Share Station can improve your workflow, head on over to lumaforge.com.
I've got a short demonstration for you. No, only joking. I didn't want to do death by PowerPoint. What I want to do first is something for you, Ronnie. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for putting the last 2 days on, because I've sat through all of them and they've all been wonderful.
Okay.
We've had quite a crowd in as well.
Yeah.
And I know they're all going to be published a bit later on, which is great, but I know how much effort it goes into organising one of these. So, Ronnie, from everybody, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Peter, tell us something more about yourself.
Right,
How many jobs are you doing?
I have 3 jobs. And there's not enough hours in the day. Probably some of you are familiar with what I do, but I thought I'd run through quickly what I do. I've got some slides, not many, and then obviously we'll go on to Pierre, because a piece of software that Pierre wrote has been instrumental in me using Final Cut Pro 10 and the success it's had. So let's get straight on with this. I run a website called FCP.co. I started it 5 years ago. It's going to be 6 this December. And it started because there wasn't a website that I wanted to read about Final Cut. And this was obviously before Final Cut Pro 10 came out. And we went through the whole it's terrible, it's great debate all through that. And it's grown and grown and grown, and got some great contributors to the site. I'm still trying to expand it, so I'm still after new writers, etc. And the forum's great. So please go and have a look. Feel free to contribute. You'll see a new design coming out very shortly on there. And that's one job that I do. My next job is I also run Destro Revolution, which is making plugins for Final Cut Pro 10. I've had a great year, actually, with bits and pieces. This is when I did a template for emulating a news broadcast. Everything shrinks back, tickers, to make it look like a live TV broadcast. That's been pretty successful on there. I've also, the penultimate one, something called Messages, designed to emulate chat in SMA. I've even written it out. How clever is that? iMessage, Facebook, and WhatsApp. That's been very successful. Actually triggered off by something I did last year, where I had to redesign everything for a promo. And I had to build everything. And I went, oh, this is crazy. I'm sure I could do a plugin. And like all bits of software, you think they're a great idea till you start doing them. 6 months later, you have something that works. 12 months later, you have a product. And also the last one I've released is social media, which has actually probably been the most popular one. It emulates a Facebook, Instagram, Vine, and I had a request from a lot of people. They wanted to show social media quickly on screen, so that's why I designed that one. Been very popular and had a great year with that. Mm-hmm. Right, that's job number 2.
Yep.
Job number 3, I'm actually an editor. And this was taken 3 years ago, halfway through the Tour de France. This was when 10.1 came out, wasn't it? 3 years ago. Yeah. And you might have read the story. Again, there's a big case study on FCP.co. We've got 4 edit suites, 2 lots of ingest using Movie Recorder. And a lot has happened really in the 3 years, because when we first started doing this, Final Cut Pro 10 on a SAN with long files didn't really work too well. What happened is they went off into audio analysis and the whole system would freeze.
I remember that.
Yeah, so what we had to do is we had to have a pre-built library with all the waveforms analysed, and then when we had a new file that was coming in, we didn't go anywhere near the inspector. The moment you open the inspector, the thing would start analysing the waveform and slow down. Thankfully, Apple has fixed that, and they've also tweaked it even more. So now we're getting pretty good response off a SAN. We're still using XSAN for this, but it's still a pretty good response. And with growing files, it's not a problem anymore. because it doesn't trigger off the waveform regeneration, which was the problem on there. Okay, on to the next one. This is all this year. This is a job that I did at the beginning of the year for a small broadcasting corporation in the UK. We're live on air every day, a couple of shows, and I tend to do a lot of stuff that's very, very fast turnaround. So from actually saying somebody to me that the files are there, to this being played out into the EVS for transmission, who would like to guess how long it took? 3/4 of an hour. 3/4 of an hour.
Fantastic.
And that's the type of level. This is all polished. This doesn't go anywhere else. It doesn't go off for an audio mix, doesn't go off for color correction. It's literally played into the EVS, video out of the Blackmagic card, straight into the EVS. And it's all P as well. The F5 shooting P, the 5D shooting P. And one of the problems with doing stuff quickly is sometimes you have to deinterlace and you have to export it, bring it back in. That's far too slow. And by accident, we found out that if you play a P timeline through the Blackmagic and you have the PSF selected, it plays it out into interlace. Because we said to the guy, oh, we're going to have to convert this file to get to you. And he says, well, no, just play it to me. I can see it. I'm watching it. So we just play it out. So 3.5 minutes later, they've got that thing. And that's really kind of like a week. We are editing right up to a deadline of the thing going out, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. It's not uncommon to be playing the end of the timeline and the front of the timeline's actually going out on air because it's been turned around on the EBS. I'll try and get through quite a lot of stuff. One of the reasons I like doing darts, it's the only job they come round in the bar at midnight with pies, which is one of the reasons why I like doing it. However, this year's been an exciting year because I had a job in March, which was making an hour-long highlight show of track cycling. There's the World Championship in London. And also we had to do a kind of like a social media running, posting clips and everything like that. And the director and I realised we probably had enough kit between us to do it ourselves.
Right.
We had enough Macs and bits and pieces. But what we didn't have is we didn't have any shared storage. So I've been talking for a long time to Sam about shared storage, and he said, well, why don't you borrow a jellyfish? And that's exactly what we did, and it was a prototype. So you can see here in the box.
I have it now.
You've got that one. It's a bit bigger than the one you could buy now, but it's more or less the same. And I think we were the first people in Europe to have.
You were the very first.
First people in Europe
Very
to have
first.
one. So what we needed to do was have a continuous recording that we could dip into and out of, so that the social media person can take up clips. Then also I could package up the highlights. So it's 3.5 days of racing that would boil down into an hour. And so we had to do a soak test. So what best place to do it than on your kitchen table? And we had that set up, running, until my other half complained. So I actually had to move the whole thing into the conservatory. And there we have the jellyfish. We've got a laptop with movie recorder running on there, a Blackmagic SDI, HD SDI in, and then 2 iMacs playing back the movie on the Final Cut Pro 10 timeline. Right. And what I did for a week is get up in the morning, go downstairs, switch it on, go into record, load up some files, keep them playing. I've actually, just off the edge of the side, I had a Blackmagic Ultra something that plays back, the SSDs to provide me with an SDI source. And just left the thing going, 10 o'clock at night, thinking of going to bed, shut the thing down. And I did that for 7 days, and not a whisper of a problem.
That was for testing out.
That was for testing, yeah. Right. Didn't even drop one frame. Oh. Everything. So that was 7 days, 7 days of that. And this is where we went with the thing, off to the Velodrome. And here you can see, you can't really see it, but it's underneath here. This is the jellyfish. It's the same laptop. This is the Chiron guys with the Hago and controller and everything over there. The director sitting in the front. What we've also got So we've got 4 clients hanging off the Jellyfish. The laptop with movie recorder running. We've got 2 edit suites, the 2 iMacs. And also you can see here another laptop plugged in as a client and a Pegasus behind it. And what we were doing, we were running ChronoSync, which is a brilliant $49 application that clones everything from one destination to another. And it's an incremental update as well. So you can just set it going and then every half hour just say update, and it will just update to the Pegasus, unplug the Pegasus at the end of the day, and then you got a full copy of whatever's on the drive. So we use that as a backup just in case. And also the ChronoSync, if you've got a growing file, you'll get an error that comes up in ChronoSync. But as soon as the file's closed, it goes away and copies it, which is brilliant. So you don't have to worry about updating growing files. And growing files are pretty important to what I do. Being able to access sporting events the moment they happen. I think I can go about 3 seconds behind real time on the timeline, about 3, which is fast enough for anybody, to be honest with you. So here we have my setup. I don't know why, but every time I take a photograph of anywhere I edit, it always has a cup of tea.
There's a cup
of tea in the front. I don't know.
I was noticing this.
Seriously, I don't know. Somebody pointed it out to me. I went, oh, yes, of course. It's a Retina iMac. If anybody says to you that Apple has abandoned the Pro market, get them to edit with Final Cut Pro 10 on a Retina iMac. It is wonderful. The display, I stopped looking at the broadcast display. I just went full screen. And we just looked at the stuff on the. Okay, it's not interlaced. I'll grant you that, but it's an amazing thing. Super quick. It worked brilliantly to the point of I'm going to end up doing it again for another job. But it just worked. I mean, also the access to the material. I think you just take it for granted that you can get straight to the stuff. Also, we had an F5 out in the actual track, doing slow-mos, 120 frames a second. They came in, and you can see I've got an S/S reader there that it just plug the stuff in. One thing, if you are using an iMac, is connectivity. You tend to run out of ports. Right. So those are kind of expansion boxes that you get are a good idea because you can do a pass-through on those. Okay, right, quickly on to April. And again, I'm working for a small broadcaster in the UK on the snooker, and I managed to convince the producers to use 10 on one suite, and the other suites were Premiere. There's 3 other suites between Premiere, and I was using 10. This is one of the things I made, which is kind of like gets played in between frames and mid-session intervals. The reason why I selected it is quite complex because Stephen Fry's actually been recorded on green screen, and I tend to do now a lot of green screen work, but multicam green screen work. So as you can see, he's actually put on a background and it's shaded with a vignette. And also you have to color correct because one of them was an F5, one of them was a 5D, and you're never going to get the F5 and the 5D to look like each other unless you kind of normally kind of like crank up the chroma and crush the blacks a bit on the F5, which is the kind of standard color correction on those. So not only have we got 2 lots of quite heavily treated chroma keyed presenter on a background that's color correct. The guy's actually color corrected, cut the key and then color correct it. But also, if you look at it on the right, you've got 2 lots of graphics on there, and you can see from the bar it's not rendered, but it would play, so you could edit.
Absolutely.
And you show that to some hardened editors out there and go, yeah, look at this, all this chroma key, and you hit the play button, and they don't believe it. But I could have taken a movie of it moving, I suppose. Yeah. But it's that level of being able to stack things up in Final Cut Pro 10 and it plays. And you can just immediately do your edit, not have to wait for anything to render. Right. And also the renders on those are pretty quick as well. And also the built-in key is pretty decent within Final Cut Pro 10, I think. It is. The producer actually sent me a still, which I whizzed into Final Cut Pro 10 while they were shooting. She said, can you just test the chroma key? And that was the result. And I said, look, here you go. It's absolutely fine, but look at the armrest, because you've got a reflection of the green on there, which got to be a good keyer to get rid of that. Also, I made closers. So at the end of the show, I think there was something like 35 shows over a 2.5-week period. They had this on this day, and it's all built in 3D. The cubes rotate, and on one of the sides it's got some video which you can do in motion. Mm-hmm. So I actually built this as a whole motion project, and then we'd drop, I'd do it in motion, drop into a layer, the video, and then render that out. Each of those, all interlaced as well, because it's for broadcast television. Mm-hmm. Each one of those probably took about 12 minutes to render, but there's depth of field, as you can probably see on the edges, depth of field, everything. This is all done in 3D with a camera moving and lights and a reflection. Kicked out about 12 minutes for each of those. And something that I did, somebody says, well, how fast is Final Cut Pro 10? This is fast, 91,000%. It was a shot, it was a time lapse. And it's a time lapse of when they go from 2 tables down to 1, and they just had a lock-off camera and movie recorder. It wasn't movie recorder, it was something else which had other problems. Recorder kind of like 6-hour clip, and you just want, I want it that space, and you just went down to that. Very, very quick to do, and in some ways for me, Final Cut Pro 10 is a problem because I was working with one producer, and I can remember it was 1/4 and we were editing the top of the whole show. Yeah. Top of the hour, quarter to the hour, and I said to him, we need to kind of render the thing out. He said, no, I know how fast this thing goes. Keep going.
That's a problem.
So that was that. It is fantastic, but I think there comes a point where you go, yes, I know it can do it.
Yeah, but
you
don't go too far in risking it. Yeah.
Right, not far to go yet. This is actually a screenshot from 3 years ago when we did the tour.
Yeah.
And this is a library from the tour. And I don't know why, but we decided to put all our archive into the library. And it all got digitized, all went in, all got keyworded, and we've never looked back. We just add to it. So that's every pedal turn that we could find going back to, it goes 1984. But there's stuff that goes back to 1910 or whatever, some of the black and white stuff. And to be able to find that really, really quickly is great. And also this year we had the restriction imposed on us that we had to give a report of all the archive we used. So we did the hard work early, and we assigned an archive role to this. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, you can't actually, on the key, assign a role that you make. You can't assign a shortcut to, which is a bit of a pain in the butt, but there you go. So having it all assigned in the library means whenever it gets edited into a program, it can get picked up. And we do that by using Producer's Best Friend. You might have seen Greg and Philip.
That's a huge program.
We kick out an XML, and then just say report the archive, and it kicks out a spreadsheet, sometimes with thumbnails, which I thought was pretty amazing. Yeah. And so we kind of like sold the big boss on this, saying it's going to be wonderful. And she came in with a sheet of paper and she said, this can't be right. There's a 23 frame clip on here. So we said, okay, what shows? I chose 6, open it up. What time code? 10:03. I went to it, and lo and behold, there's a 23 frame clip of archive in an edit. It is a wonderful tool, and we even do our music returns. Yeah. We kick out a spreadsheet and hand it to the PA, who hates the job of doing music returns. We just give them a spreadsheet now, and they go fine, and then that gets filed off. Yeah. I'd show you that because that was 3 years ago. It's changed this year, and it was a bit of a revelation because the company where we do it at turned around to me and said, we haven't got enough monitors.
Right.
So they said, we can give you one of these, an Ezio 27-inch or whatever. And I said, well, I'll keep the other one. But what I did is I actually flipped the thing on its side. And this is a complete revolution for me because, I don't know about you, but the search box in the top right is, if you put 2 screens side by side and you're on the left, the search box is too far over there. And I'm knocking on a bit, I'm wearing glasses, and I have to kind of like go and look at it. So this brings it all a lot closer to you. And I mean, I love the film strip display for finding stuff, but I tend in this situation to probably use the list view more often. If you're looking for a shot, flick it into the film strip view. But I tend to work a bit more on that. Also, what I did for the first time this year, and it's also one of those things you find out and you think, oh, why didn't I think of that before, is when library-wide smart collections came out, I didn't realise how useful they could be. And what I've actually got is I've got a smart collection called Today. And what you do is you just go in, double-click and put it in and say, show me everything in the last 12 hours. And it's what I call a dynamic smart collection, which means if you power it up to the next day, there's going to be nothing in it. And during the day, as you get stuff, it fills up. And as you see, we're making a cycling program here. So we're getting multilateral feeds in, we're getting clips sent in, etc., and graphics. So what I tend to do is import things into the events, and then just click on the Today smart collection, and then it lists everything in order, so it kind of feeds graphics, and so I stay on that day. And by the end of the tour, we've got something like 3,500 objects in the library. So there comes a point where you need to find stuff quick, and it's a case of having a way of being able to filter out stuff you don't want to see. You don't want to see a graphic from 3 days ago. You want to see today. And just to show something like this, the cycling programs I make are made up of 4 parts. Parts 1, 2, and 3 are easy. They get done. They get shoved off to the EVS for broadcast. Part 4 is actually made from 3 parts. So that's part A is the race to over the line. Part 4B is what I've made there, which is the results sequence, graphics, people standing on podiums, interviews, etc. And then part 4C is really the piece to camera from the presenter, goodbye, here's what's coming tomorrow, and a closer. And there's three suites will handle each of those parts, and then they get combined in the EVS with a playlist. But just to say how close we work out, up to the wire, it's quite common for me to be editing part 4B while part 4A is on the air. So part 4A is probably never longer than about 8 or 9 minutes. So, and you hear the PA counting down, 4 minutes till we need it, 3 minutes till we need it, and you've got to make it. And Final Cut Pro is just the best tool for doing that. Just as a benchmark, a complicated part, about 13 minutes long. This is all in ProRes 422, stereo, 1920 by 1080. I reckon I can get it to the EVS for transmission, a 30-minute part in about 2 minutes. So a colleague of mine was saying how proud he was that a 2-hour show that he had tested out on another NLE, beginning with P, he could kick out in 40 minutes. Right. 2-hour show. I rebuilt it at home, 12 minutes. So there you go. So anyway, I don't want to sound like I don't like other NLEs because I think they're great. But so I thought I'd balance up the thing by showing you a screen grab of my last Premiere edit. There you go. So that's about it from me. What makes my life a lot easier is Movie Recorder from Softron, and I think Pierre's going to come up and have a chat about that. It's a bulletproof piece of software and works extremely well.
We're so happy to have Pierre here. Thank you, Peter.